Hi there and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be working on this photo that was taken a few years ago from the Academy Bridge in Venice. It's a 4-minute exposure taken with a 16-stop filter. This has removed all of the boat traffic in the canal as none of it stayed in place long enough to register. And there are a few things that I want to deal with. The first is that because I was standing on a wooden bridge using a lightweight travel tripod, there's a little bit of softness in the image. And also I want to crop it slightly to remove that poster on the left hand side and bring it into a more of a 16:9 format, I think, which will work better. So the first thing that I'm going to do is right click, go down to enhance, and when the dialog box opens, it defaults to the denoise option, but I want to uncheck that and check the super resolution option. And if I press and hold, you can see there's the original and there's the enhanced version, and it's quite a bit sharper. I can drag through, look at some other areas. The little balcony there, that's the enhanced version, that's the unenhanced version, so there's quite an improvement there. And apart from bringing out the additional detail, this also quadruples the size of the image. It doubles the resolution in both directions, resulting in an image that it's going from a 16 megapixel photo to a 64 megapixel photo. So that gives me lots of options for cropping. So let's, first of all, I'll go into the crop and I'm going to choose a 16:9 aspect ratio. And I'll drag in from the bottom corner there and maybe just reposition the image so that the buildings on the left are more or less centered. I might take it in very slightly from the right as well, just to remove some of the distraction of that boat. I'm kind of happy with the layout of that. I think it gives more of a feeling of the expanse of the canal. I think this image would work best in black and white. It'll add to the timeless feel of a place that has barely changed in hundreds of years. So I'm going to choose the Adobe monochrome profile because that will allow me to selectively adjust how each color is converted into black and white. If you look at the buildings on this side here, they're predominantly in the yellow to red end of the spectrum. The canal itself is sort of a bluey green color, and obviously with the sky is blue. So if I go into Adobe monochrome and go down to the B and W tab here, I have all the colors listed down, the primary colors listed down here, and I can adjust how they are converted to black and white. So if I look at the yellows here, if I drag the yellow slider down, you'll see the buildings on the left darken. Same with the orange, and I just double click those to zero them. And if I go into the blue, you'll see that the sky really darkens down, and the canal as well, although at the expense of a lot of noise. It's worth just clicking on the auto button just to see what Lightroom itself comes up with, and it has created a little bit of contrast here. It's maybe a little bit soft. Maybe if I drag that orange down a little more and the yellow. I don't want to go too far here because it will cause the image to break up a little bit. It's brought the blue up, but I think taking it back slightly gives us a nice amount of contrast. So from here now I'm going to go in and do an adjustment on the sky. The image is very slightly overexposed, but I have managed to hold on to detail. You can see that the histogram here on the right is just up to the right hand side. So I'm just going to just drag the contrast down a little, and the highlights, just to give us a little bit of evenness between the foreground and the sky. Next, I want to work on the buildings on the left hand side. So I'm going to create another new mask, and I'm going to just try select subject. I think, yeah, Lightroom has done a pretty good job on that, apart from missing this sort of panel up here. So we can very quickly correct that. We can just click the add button, choose a brush, and paint that in, and this area here as well. I'm not too worried about it being super accurate because this is just a slight contrast adjustment. What I'm going to do is just pull the blacks down very, very slightly. I'm going to take the highlights down because this area here in the center is a little bit bright. So we take that down, it brings it back under control. And I could even bring the whites up a little bit now, just to brighten up that whole area there, all that, the facade of all those buildings there. And I'm happy with that. Next, I want to work on the canal itself. I'd like to lighten that up. So what I'm going to do is create a new mask, but this time I'm going to just click on the ellipsis here, the 3 dots on mask 2, and I'm going to choose duplicate and invert mask. And that has now given me the canal, but it has also given me the other buildings and the sky. So what I can do is I can click subtract, select sky, and now I just have the canal and the buildings on the right. If I click back on that mask and I choose subtract again, I can choose objects, and I'm going to make my cursor a little bit smaller here and paint in on all of this area on the right hand side. Try and give Lightroom as much help as I can in telling it what I wanted to select. And when I let go of the mouse, it does a pretty good job of removing it. It's just missed a few of the areas. So we'll go back to the mask again, subtract, and I'll use a brush this time, just to take out those few pieces there. And this little bit on the distance there as well. And I can see where the mask hasn't been quite as accurate there. And I'm just going to use negative dehaze to lighten up the water. Okay. And I'm thinking now another new mask on the buildings in the distance here, but this time maybe just a radial gradient just on the Cathedral Santa Maria there in the distance. And again, a little bit of negative dehaze just to create that feeling of haziness and that sort of early morning mist that you get sometimes. Now I'm going to go back to my sky mask and see what a little bit of positive dehaze might do for that, just to bring out a little more in the sky, kind of like that. Maybe just do another linear gradient on the top of the sky, dragging it down there. Keep it at an angle so that it's not affecting the buildings too much. Take the exposure down very slightly. And maybe now it's time to do a few global adjustments. So let's go into the basic panel and let's bring up the whites a little and bring down the blacks. And I'm looking at the image now, and I just think this area in the right hand side here is just gone a little bit murky. So let's go in with another radial mask. Maybe lift the shadow slightly. Bring up the whites. Now, from here, let's go back into the black and white mix. Just see if we play around a little bit more. Can we get away with maybe dragging that blue down without it breaking up? And dragging the orange levels down as well, just to darken up the buildings. You can see particularly here in this area here. It is a fine balancing act between getting the effect you want and adding noise into the image. But I think that's pretty much where I want to take it to. There's our finished image. And if I go into my history, and go right down to the start, there's where we came from. and there's where we finished up. I am conscious of the edge of the building here looking like it's leaning a little bit. I think that's just part of the way the buildings are in Venice, but we could go in and use the transform tool and maybe click on auto, see what that does for us, and it does straighten it up a little bit. So that's it for this episode. I hope you found it useful, and if you did, please subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell icon to be notified when the next episode comes along, and give the image a thumbs up if you can. Until the next time, bye bye.